In this video we will see that does the great saying an apple a day keeps the doctor away really mean it? To find out some crazy facts, keep watching it and subscribe to our channel right away. Let's get started. The common English adage an apple a day keeps the doctor away first emerged in the 19th century. It promotes apple consumption and, by extension, the idea that if one eats healthful foods, one will remain in good health and will not need to see the doctor often. In Pembrokeshire, a variation of the proverb eat an apple before going to bed, and you'll keep the doctor from earning his bread was reported in 1866. The modern proverb an apple a day keeps the doctor away first appeared in print as early as 1887, and usage of it dates to the end of the 19th century. In order to evaluate the risk of cardiovascular diseases, a 2013 study compared eating apples with taking a typical daily cholesterol-lowering medication. The computer model came to the conclusion that eating an apple a day is able to match modern medicine and is likely to have fewer side effects, while having a similar annual cost, for people over the age of 50, than taking a statin drug to lower low-density lipoprotein cholesterol. Eaters of apples were more likely, in the crude analysis, to keep the doctor and prescription medications away, according to a 2015 study. However, the association was no longer statistically significant when socio-demographic and health-related characteristics were taken into account. According to the study, those who ate an apple a day also took less prescription drugs, giving such medical sayings an empirical analysis, according to researchers at the University of Michigan School of Nursing in Ann Arbor, may allow us to profit from the wisdom of our predecessors. Among order to examine the effectiveness of the proverb among daily apple eaters against non-eaters, Matthew Davis, Ph.D., and co-authors analyzed an outcome of no more than one visit to the doctor per year for the study's measure of keeping the doctor away. So, did eating an apple a day keep the doctor at bay? Not at all. No. In the analysis, there was no statistically significant difference in the frequency of doctor visits for those who regularly ate apples. An apple a day did, however, keep the pharmacist at bay, according to the study. Daily apple consumption was not linked to successfully limiting oneself reported doctor visit per year when socio-demographic and health-related factors like education and smoking were taken into account. 9%, 753, of the 8,399 participants who responded to a questionnaire asking them to recollect their food consumption were apple eaters, and the remaining 76.46 were not. The apple eaters had greater levels of education, were more likely to belong to a racial or ethnic minority, and smoked less. The National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, which was conducted in 2007, 2008, and 2009, 2010, provided the data for the analysis. The authors take into account the differences in apple eaters that, beyond the effects of the apple eating itself, could have explained why they used healthcare services less. While the direction of the associations we observed supports the superiority of apple eaters over non-apple eaters at avoiding the use of healthcare services, these differences largely lack statistical significance, they write. The researchers contrasted daily apple eaters with non-eaters in order to examine the relationship between apple consumption and doctor visits. If participants indicated that they consumed at least 149 g of raw apples daily, it was considered to be one apple. Less than this amount was considered to be no daily apple consumption, and liquids and sauces made only from apples were also not included. By comparing doctor visits from individuals who ate no apples to those who ate one small apple, one medium apple, or one big apple daily, the study also examined for any response to increasing the quantity of daily apple consumption. The investigation reveals no connection between the dose of apples and the possibility of avoiding healthcare services, such as going to the doctor. Except for avoiding prescription drugs, the authors discovered. However, this was before taking into account the socio-demographic and health characteristics of the survey participants. 39% of apple eaters avoided more than one yearly doctor visit, compared with 33.9% of non-apple eaters. The study also indicated that apple eaters were more likely to prevent illness overall. Additionally, the daily apple eaters were more likely, 47.7% versus 41.8%, to successfully avoid using prescription medications. This difference held up to statistical analyses. Thus, While keeping the doctor away did not work, eating an apple a day was associated with keeping the pharmacist away, which was a statistically significant finding. A study of overnight hospital stays and visits to mental health facilities also revealed no effect of the adage. Apple eaters had no different odds of avoiding any of these two outcomes. The study's overall outcome was that only one finding concurred with conventional understanding. Compared to people who don't eat apples, apple eaters were slightly more likely to avoid using prescription medications. Consuming apples has been positively correlated with overall lung health as well as negatively correlated with asthma. In a recent Australian study involving 1,600 adults, consumption of apples and pears was linked to lower bronchial hypersensitivity and asthma risk, but overall fruit and vegetable consumption was not linked to asthma risk or severity. Vitamins E, C, retinol, and alpha-carotene in particular were not linked to asthma or bronchial hypersensitivity. In the past, it has been discovered that adults in the United Kingdom who consumed apples also consumed more selenium. Nearly 600 people with asthma and 900 people without asthma were surveyed for this study to learn more about their eating habits and lifestyles. Consumption of all fruits and vegetables was only marginally inversely related to asthma, whereas consumption of apples was significantly inversely related. Subjects that regularly ate at least 2 apples per week showed the greatest benefit from this later impact. Consumption of onions, tea, and red wine did not affect the prevalence of asthma, indicating a particularly positive impact of apple flavonoids. Carotene intake was weakly but positively connected with asthma, while vitamins C and E were not correlated with asthma incidence. In the Finnish study, including 10,000 men and women, eating apples and oranges was linked to a lower risk of asthma. Quercetin, hesperetin, and naringenin were primarily responsible for the connection between flavonoid intake and a lower risk of developing asthma in general. Juices, white cabbage, onions, grapefruit, and other fruits and vegetables were not linked to a lower chance of developing asthma. In the Netherlands, a study involving more than 13,000 adults discovered that apples may have a positive impact on lung function. Consumption of pears and apples was found to be adversely associated with chronic obstructive lung disease and favorably associated with pulmonary function. There was no correlation between chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and tea, the main source of catechins, despite the fact that catechin intake was positively linked with pulmonary function and negatively associated with COPD. A study of about 2,500 Welshmen in their middle years, 59 years, similarly showed that eating apples improved lung function. Consumption of citrus fruit, fruit juice/squash, and apples were all favorably connected with lung function, which was determined by forced expiratory volume, FEV, in 1 second. After accounting for smoking, the correlation between citrus fruit and fruit juice or squash, however, lost significance. Even when potential confounders like smoking, body mass index, social status, and exercise were taken into account, apple consumption was still favorably connected with lung function. Comparing participants who ingested 5 or more apples per week to those who did not, the difference in FEV, 138 milliliters, was significant. Apple eating may also be linked to a lower risk of diabetes, in addition to lowering the risk of heart disease, cancer, and asthma. Apple eating was linked to a lower risk of type 2 diabetes in the previously mentioned 10,000 person Finnish study. An increased intake of quercetin, a key compound found in apple peels, was also linked to a lower risk of type 2 diabetes. Consuming merectin in berries was also linked to a lower incidence of type 2 diabetes, while eating onions, oranges, grapefruit, and white cabbage was not. Apples, and specifically apple peels, have been proven to have strong antioxidant properties that can significantly slow the growth of colon and liver cancer cells. The antioxidant activity of apples with the peel as a whole was around 83 moles vitamin C equivalents, which suggests that 100 g of apples, or around 1 serving, have antioxidant activity that is comparable to around 1,500 milligrams of vitamin C. However, there are only about 5.7 milligrams of vitamin C in 100 g of apples. Although apple antioxidant action is largely derived from a range of different chemicals in addition to vitamin C, which is a potent antioxidant, according to this study, apple's vitamin C content made up less than 0.4% of all antioxidant activity. This is it for today, guys. If you enjoyed our today's content, share it with your loved ones. See you next time.